Welcome to Goldfinch Bio's interview series, The Feeder. We're speaking with people impacted by kidney disease and a wide range of experts who are driving change, innovation, and hope in the kidney space. In this episode, Dr. Tony Johnson, President and CEO of Goldfinch Bio, speaks with Joshua Tarnoff, Chief Executive Officer of NephCure Kidney International.
Boy, so Josh, welcome to The Feeder. We're really grateful to have you with us today. I'm excited to introduce our listeners to you and the important work of NephCure. I think to kick things off, it would be great to have you introduce yourself, say a little bit about yourself, and then about NephCure and the focus of NephCure so that our listeners can learn more about you.
Wonderful. Tony, thank you, first of all, to you and also the folks at Goldfinch for inviting us. This is a very important topic, and we are honored to be partaking, so thank you. My background, really quick, I was on your side of the fence for 34 years in the biopharmaceutical industry, and through working with a kidney company, got to see this amazing organization called NephCure, and jokingly said, well, one day, guys, if you have an opening, and wow, dreams come true. So NephCure is really an incredible organization. So it's a patient advocacy organization dedicated to nephrotic syndrome, but it's a little bit of an odd duck in that we're a research-focused patient advocacy organization. And very quickly, we were founded about 20 years ago. We just had our 20th anniversary. And if you can imagine being a patient 20 years ago at year 2000-ish, if you got a diagnosis of nephrotic syndrome, we didn't even know what the disease was, how it worked. And so the organization through the years has dedicated about $40 million worth of research that went into basic and translational research. And now with all the explosion of clinical trials, we've pivoted now as an organization to really be more clinically focused and make sure that all companies can recruit and that we welcome in the next generation of first therapies ever. So thank you.
Wonderful. And of course, I'm completely aligned with you. I think NephCure is a phenomenal organization and why we are so keen to partner with you. But now I'd like to explore the current landscape of research in kidney disease and the current state of innovation in kidney research with you. So, to start off with, can you help our listeners understand how have rare glomerular diseases been treated over the last 50 to 60 years and what's been the standard of care?
Yeah, it's not a pretty picture, as you know. And for folks not familiar with it, nephrotic syndrome and FSGS in particular, there haven't been any new advances. And first of all, there are no approved therapies, right? And there haven't been any advances in 50 years with steroids. And it's really sadly been an acceptable fait accompli that if you have this disease, if you don't respond to steroids and some other things, you're probably looking at dialysis and transplant. The tragedy is that we're using off-label therapies. And I'm not talking steroids at 5 milligrams like you and I get a bee sting. This is 50, 80 milligrams, even in children. It's incredibly immunosuppressive. And then we have other off-label immunosuppressive agents. And so often the off-label treatments are almost as bad as the disease. And sadly, that's where we've been for a long time.
Yeah. And just to follow up on steroids, I know you appreciate this, but those high doses long-term are associated with a myriad of long-term negative consequences. And then for immunosuppressives, some actually worsen kidney function, as well as having tolerability issues. So it really isn't pretty. You mentioned transplant. From my point of view, transplant's a treatment, not a cure. But what do you think?
Yeah, it's a great perspective. First off, I'm glad we have transplants. I'm glad we have dialysis. Don't get me wrong, because without those, people would be dying. But they should not be an acceptable fait accompli. Our job at NephCure is to help you keep whatever kidney you've got, whether it's your native kidney or your transplant kidney. We want you to keep that. And so, yeah, it's a great question about transplant. In some patients, in rare cases, though, it is almost a treatment, and that a lot of the times it doesn't come back. But sadly, in about 40–50% of the cases, the FSGS, for example, comes back almost immediately. And so transplants, it's not a free ride. It's a tough haul.
What can you say about the state of clinical research, the state of clinical trials in say, starting off with the last 50 years or so, and then moving forward to now?
Yeah, it's funny. If you're a nephrologist and you go to the ASN meeting, everybody has seen this slide that says out of the 15 or 16 or so medical subspecialties, nephrology ranked last in clinical trial participation, right? How many times have you seen that? And the reality is that now with the acceptance back for people in history, first we had to figure out, okay, how does this disease tick? What's the pathophysiology? What's the pathway? And once we figured those out, then pharma companies can say, wow, I think I've got something for that. But it's not really cost effective for me to go into a rare disease. So, why should I do that? And so fortunately, we had a change in guidance, as you know, with the FDA, and that led to the acceptance of proteinuria as a surrogate biomarker for outcome. And now we've had a tremendous awakening of clinical trials. And so we went from 3 trials in 2016 to now over 25 today in 2021. And so the landscape is beautiful in that if I talk to a patient, I go, look, we now know there's many pathways in this disease, right? It's not a simple disease. It's very heterogeneous. But the good news is, matching that, there are a number of companies, such as Goldfinch and others, that are exploring those pathways specifically, so we can target that drug to that. So the promise, and not just hopeful thinking, 10 years ago, we're not far away. And so the clinical trial landscape has exploded, and nephrology is now getting on board. I think the infrastructure exists today where it maybe didn't 3 years ago.
Fabulous. And what do you think about the regulatory environment and I guess the state of science, academic science in the kidney arena?
Oh, well, great points, both of them. First, regulatory wise, I can't say enough good about the cardio and renal division at FDA. They're real pioneers, and you've got folks down there who really want to see new therapies come to market for these patients. They realize the burden. They've sat on our panels and we've had them talk to patients. They know firsthand the urgent need that's out there, and they've really been wonderful and helpful. They'll never sacrifice, obviously, on safety, but they really have been super helpful to companies, giving guidance and really being there for them. The other part of your question is
around the science.
The science is, so it's great. We've now invested in research, observational studies, and people really look at precisely what are these pathways. We often say, if you've seen one FSGS patient, well, you've seen one patient. They're so different. Even twins in a family can be different, right?
Yeah.
And so we are now aware that there are multiple pathways. I think Neptune has probably identified 5 major pathways that we can now perform assays on. We now also have genetic testing that can add tremendous, a lens onto exactly what type of you have. And so if we have that and we match it to the different pathways that are being studied, we have the ability in the near future to match. And I think that's what separates, and people need to realize that nephrotic syndrome is very diverse. It's not easy, but the great news is, man, there's a great number of technologies on the horizon. It's wonderful.
Yeah, it is wonderful. And NephCure hasn't been silent through all this. Help our listeners understand the role that NephCure is playing to advance this. I would call it a paradigm shift towards a lot more research, clinical research, a lot more science, and a supportive regulatory environment.
That's great. So NephCure, as I mentioned before, was really founded to find a cure. It's been a very purposeful mission of step 1, basic research, translational research, and now into the clinic. And so it would be a horrible shame, right? If all of a sudden all this research advanced to this point and wow, you can't recruit trials. Rare disease is notoriously difficult to recruit, no matter what therapeutic category, but kidney disease in particular. Again, as we talked about, there wasn't a lot of experience here with it. So what's NephCure's role? We don't conduct the trials. We don't recruit the patients. We are, as we've been called, a backbone, right? We provide the framework of the key stakeholders that are very cross-functional and come together. So we see it as our role to bring you at Goldfinch together with patients, researchers, FDA, all of the folks who are stakeholders in this mission. And the good news is we've got wonderful relationships, as you know, great organizations like the ASN with the Key Project, National Kidney Foundation and others, that we really do come together, and Neptune Research Consortia. So these are people who've been working in the space and to share. So NephCure's role, about 3 years ago, we launched a program called Gateway. And the remit of Gateway was to remove, in a short time, the obstacles and the hurdles to patient recruitment. And the goal was no clinical trial fails due to patient recruitment. And that's kind of been our remit and focus for the past several years.
And how do you think it's going? What's NephCure's impact in the past 3 years through Gateway on supporting clinical trials?
Thank you. It's a perfect lead in. About, I think 3 days ago, it was published. If people haven't seen it, if they go to KI, Kidney International, it's the largest kidney journal of its kind. And there was a wonderful article outlining NephCure's role in exactly this subject. And then there's also another sub-editorial that I would also highly advise people to read about pediatric inclusion in clinical trials, where if you can, about 40% of the patients are pediatric. So at some point, we all start with adults, but then migrate to children. And remember that this affects them both almost equally. So NephCure's role, I think, it was a shaky start, as you know, right? Anytime being a pioneer is difficult. But again, I don't think it's just NephCure. It's NephCure, FDA, it's companies like Goldfinch, all coming around the table saying, how do we fix this? And I think today, 3 years on from Gateway, we're in a much better place. We know how to recruit more effectively. We know how to write the protocols that are patient-friendly. We know trying to match the right patient to the right trial is a lot better than it used to be.